Hello, Gophers. So I'm joined by Yann Bizeul today. So thank you, Yann, for coming to the podcast.
Yeah, my pleasure. Glad to be here. It's awesome.
So as we always start in here, I'd like to know a little bit more about you. So anything that you want to tell us, it will be very appreciated. If you can, focus on the technical aspect and things like that, so we just have a good grasp of your background and things like that. So anything that you want to say, we'll go from there.
Okay. Yeah, so let's start. Today. I'm a solution engineer for a storage company doing cloud and data center storage, and that I've been doing this for maybe 10, 12 years. I started my career as a well, actually, I started my career following the steps of my father, that was a printer, and I started in the graphic arts, doing publishing for magazines, advertising, and stuff like that. And I quickly shifted or oriented my career. I've always been a nerd, so I needed to do that stuff, and I shifted my career to the sysadmin aspect of things, managing Mac. Ecosystem for my companies, and from there I started following changing a company for an infrastructure provider, mostly working with IBM, and that's where I shifted from the user aspect of things to more of the vendor side of things, and from there working with infrastructure vendors, now working with well, actually, in fact, not integrators, but now vendors. I have a now very happy with my career, very technical role, a lot of interaction with customers and such. So that's the kind of things I like to do. But I don't know. I was probably 10 or 12. I was coding on my Apple II with BASIC, and learned different languages from there. But it always stuck. It never left me. Whatever I'm doing, I always have that you know hit to code, script, do something, automate stuff. So that never left me.
That's interesting. So yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about the ecosystem of the Apple. I was not part of that. Um, I've heard that a lot about learning to code with the Apple
Yeah.
environment at first. Yeah, it seems to be very open at the beginning. And we are talking like what, early 80s, 90s,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, probably. I mean, there was the Apple time, and that was, that's where I learned basic, and that was a lot of fun. You couldn't do much, but it was a lot of fun, especially for a kid, with a passion for this. Then there was all these years, the Apple years, where there was that war, the Apple versus PC war, and you
Right.
had to choose a camp, right? It changed a lot since then. It's very, very much more open now. But I was all in, on the Apple ecosystem, and I have to admit it, I was kind of a fanboy of the Apple environment. Still
Well,
are. I'm still am, yeah.
yeah. It was pretty good, good machine, good hardware. Even maybe even today, I don't really know, and I never really. I've had an iMac for sometimes at some point, but yes, it, it seems pretty open at that time to get started. You could change a lot of things.
Yeah, it was a fun ecosystem. I started actually. I tried coding back then on the pre Mac OS 10 environment, pre Unix times. It was Pascal back then. I
Nice.
couldn't, for the life of me, I couldn't do anything with it.
No.
Yeah, it only when Mac OS 10 and Objective C, I started, I understand those concepts and be able to code actual program with it. But before that, nah, I couldn't for the life of me figure out how
Yeah.
that worked.
Yeah, when I was at when I was learning my craft at the beginning. I was at school, and there was this Delphi
No.
course.
Yeah.
I really really enjoy Pascal. So Delphi, for those that don't know, maybe because it's kind of extinct these days. It's like Object Pascal basically, um, and they immediately caught me because they had this. I don't know how to say that in English. I will say that in French. They have this crepuscule team with their ID. So basically, at that time, it was kind of common to have the ID, or at least where you were writing code
Uh-huh.
directly into the compiler. I'm thinking about like Borland C++. That comes to mind. But they have this basically dark theme very very early, end of the 90s, and I was like, wow,
Hmm.
this is this is so nice, and I really like Pascal myself, but yeah, unfortunately, things
Yeah.
things did not really work for them, I guess.
Yeah, no, probably not. Yeah, I think well, in the scientific, yeah, scientific community was very big on Pascal, if I remember correctly. Yeah, but then things changed.
Yeah.
Welcome to 2025, I guess.
So the printing industry, that is
Yeah,
fascinating a little bit. I mean, wow, this seems to be very competitive, especially what I would imagine in those years. So what happened there exactly? So why have you decided to return to a more software engineering kind of
yeah.
things from there?
Yeah, I always had a passion for development, so that always drove me. Even when I shifted from the actual working on documents and ads and stuff like that, managing Mac or computer environments, I always felt the urge to automate things and stuff like that. So I couldn't make it my actual work. Um, I stopped at the baccalaureate, high school diploma, right?
Hmm.
So I didn't have like engineer years. I didn't go to the faculty because I was not big on study. These things, learning lessons and pass exams and stuff like that. I literally sucked at this. So I didn't have the diploma. And in hindsight, maybe that was for the best, right? I'm not sure I would actually be working as a developer today. I'm not sure that would be the right fit for me. I like to be free. I like to spin up ideas and make programs and do things for fun. But, hired by a company to do this, I'm not sure that's a right fit for this. So from the printing industry, what I kept is probably a passion for I don't know, UX, you would call it today, right?
Hmm.
Making the right, pleasant, nice, simple UIs for the users and make the focus on the usability of software. That's something I try to put, not saying that I'm good at it, but I'm always thinking about it and making something easy to use and have nice buttons and stuff that people can grasp very, very quickly and easily. That's always a big driver. And I think some of that comes from my father and from the fonts, from the page layout, and the things that you had to be conscious about when you were working on the document, whether it's an ad or putting text and images together on a page for a magazine and stuff like that. It's always something that you have to be very cautious about when you work in the printing industry, and that thing stuck actually. Yeah,
I would imagine that kind of drives you to be interested in front end at first, maybe
yeah.
more a little bit like more UX. So what happened there? So what happened after your printing industry experience? So did you find a job in tech, and how did you learn?
Yeah, so I left. I stayed with the same company, moving from an operator role to a sysadmin role. So that's how it started the more technical career. Now the thing is, I couldn't draw anything for the life of me. So, as a graphics designer, no, the road was closed. It was done. My brother is actually pretty good at illustrations and stuff like that. So I just have the notions and how to space things around and how to make something kind of pleasant. Align, you give me, I cannot spend less than half an hour on a freaking PowerPoint slide until everything is freaking aligned and square. And I have a real OCD for this. and it's a pain in the butt, really. But it's fun. So and people don't understand. They say, what? Why do you care? Right? It doesn't matter whether the title is 2 pixels on the left. Who cares? Well, I care, and I apologize for this, but I can't really send that to a customer without realigning those stuff. So that's a curse and a blessing at the same time. But it's funny.
Nice. So when you say like sysadmin, so I'm guessing. So you were mentioning it was like a mostly Apple-based
Yeah,
computers. Yeah.
totally.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So that went for a while, and that was fun. But I think it started. I kind of yeah. That's actually around that time that I started being interested by Linux, and it caught me really that free operating system that was Unix, very mysterious back then. That I didn't know anything about Unix, but I liked the idea of having a free operating system that starts with a freaking blinking shell, and
Right.
possibilities are wide open from this. And yeah, it really caught me. I really had a passion for open source projects, discovering new stuff, setting up, freaking mail servers from scratch, and Apache, and web servers, and start Python and Perl before that. So I started using Linux, and I eventually found a job with Linux with an open source company that still exists today, actually. And we were mostly working for, administrations, building websites, building mail servers, DNS servers. That was kind of the beginning of the web for the administrations and companies back then. So there was a big market for, cheap, not necessarily cheap, but because of the open source, that was people's expectation that things wouldn't be too expensive. And I started working. I don't know, I don't know much time, but quite some time with that company, working on website, PHP, a lot of PHP
Yeah.
back then, and infrastructure job. And my buddy there that I met is still my best friend today. He moved over to the infrastructure side of things, to a vendor, and I to an integrator, and he hired me, actually, and we started working more on the infrastructure side of things. It was kind of farther from the system and coding and scripting. Infrastructure is fun as well, but you can always do that kind of stuff. When you're installing servers and storage arrays and stuff like that, there's always things that you can automate and have fun with it. So yeah, and then from there, I emigrated to the U.S., to New York, as my wife had a mission there, and that's where I started working for that company, for NetApp, which is a storage vendor. I'm still with them today. I'm back in France for, I don't know, maybe 5 years now. But the New York Times were awesome, man. That was the life, living the dream there.
Oh yeah.
But we had to go back, for the family and stuff, and that was a lot of fun. Loved it.
So when you switched to NetApp, was that when you started to program more in Go and things like that? Was that when you started doing Go development?
So the interesting things is the working with big vendors. You've got customers and stuff, and there's always a lot of things to tinker with, right, in the backends. And the interesting things about the NetApp array, the storage array, every week they send what we call an auto support, and they send to a huge data lake information about the systems, volumes, IP addresses, configurations, stuff like that. And as a solution engineer, I kind of needed to access those information, make product that would gather and summarize stuff, sum up, volume names and data, and gather information from all over the place from our backends here, and consolidate this. And I started doing internal products, right? Type here the serial numbers of the serial number of the machine, hit enter, and then you'll see a nice graph of the evolution of storage usage over the past 2 years and stuff like that. So I needed a language to do this, and back then, well, that was not Go, that was Python.
Hmm.
That was the de facto, very standard language to do that kind of stuff. So that was my need. Build stuff with data with a UI front end. That's usually what I have to do. And in the dozen of products I've been working on, it's always the same pattern. And I quickly realized, not quickly enough, unfortunately, but going from Perl to starting with Bash, right? Websites in Bash. Go figure. Why would you do that? Well,
Wow.
I
Sounds
moved
fun.
over. Yeah, that was fun, but I quickly realized I needed something else. So I moved over to Perl and then Python, and then eventually I learned about that new quote unquote language, and I put that aside for a while, maybe a year or two. Started looking for some videos and courses on Coursera and try to get the grasp of it. I don't know. I didn't put the time. It didn't click back then. But my buddy I was referring to earlier said, he's not a developer. He hates development, but he's like, well, that new thing I have to work on a product that's coded in Go. That thing is actually pretty cool. And I started looking into it and say, okay, I have that new thing to do. Let's let's do it with Go. Let's see how it goes. And that's when it clicked, and that I realized that the ecosystem, the easiness of working with HTTP servers and routes and REST APIs and stuff like that was much easier, especially when going to multi-threaded, or it's not technically the right term, but concurrency and that kind of stuff. I discovered this, and it was the methods and how it works with Go. I was like, well, that makes much more sense than doing it in Python or Perl, and that's when eventually it clicked. And that's probably around the same time that I discovered React and the single page applications and stuff like that. Up until then, I was working with pure HTML, doing my own progress bars and stuff, so it's not very very efficient. So at the same time I started working with React, and I kind of, the both together made a lot of sense with API first application like SPAs, single page apps that load once, and then in the JavaScript code calls REST APIs and display that information that got from the API and chain things together like that. Made a lot of sense, and I really loved that method and how it worked. And from then, everything I created was created with Go. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty interesting. So were those application or small web application that you were building for, we are still talking about internal, internal for the company?
Yeah, for the most part. And then when you start working on things and it grows bigger and bigger, you start developing patterns and frameworks and things that well, why wouldn't I polish this, right? It could make a lot of sense. So that's my GitHub kind of started popping up with those projects. And some of the stuff I actually created for my work at NetApp, but ended up releasing it to the public. And I'm thinking about, if you look at Upload with an H, I needed something. I'm authoring a virtual appliance, which is called AnyBox. So it's basically a Linux server with bundled stuff and with a web UI wrapper around it, so users are able to log in, deploy a virtual appliance, and graphically configure a product that some folks at NetApp are doing. Back then, people didn't have a choice, didn't have virtual appliance. It could be a pain in the butt to configure and set up, and some products are complicated in some way. So I wanted to provide a way for the users to consume that product very easily and very quickly. So I started working on that virtual appliance, and I needed an API server and a front end for it. And eventually version 4 was released, that was completely refactored in Go. So it was much easier to manage. And people are using that virtual appliance, and sometimes they have issues. And when they have issues, they do what? They collect logs. And what did they do with the logs? Well, they send the logs via email. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where trouble begins. Because when you send a 25 meg, it's not
Yeah.
that big. But most email servers would say, nope, not doing it. They go figure something else. So I needed a front end for users to be able to, without authentication, very quickly, without wasting any time, get a link, click on the link, and upload the file. That's all I wanted. I didn't want people to log in through a portal to be able to send a file. So that's when I started working with Upload. And with Upload, you can, as an administrator, you can create links to let people upload files to you or send files to people so they can download it. And that's how it worked, right? I had that need for my company. I needed something running that I wouldn't spend like years coding. And for some reason, I couldn't find a product that did this exactly. There's a lot of products that do things, but I'm I'm pretty needy when I'm looking for a product. If the thing doesn't do things exactly how I imagine it, well, I'm gonna grab the keyboard and start coding it myself. Especially for small products like that, when it's not a
Yeah.
big deal, right? It was probably a couple of weeks to have a finished product, and some POC in a couple of days. So that's what Go makes easy, right? You can concept things very quickly with it, and that's why I still enjoy using Go for that kind of stuff. So yep, internal stuff, and then also that becomes public products. Another example, very quick on that. Sometimes I access virtual environments for customers, and it's very uh, constrained environment. Not even the possibility to do a freaking copy paste from your computer to the remote desktop.
Right. Yeah.
So how do you do when you need to pass informations over? So I started working on a YB feed, which is basically a web page you open on both sides, on the computer, on the remote computer, and on your local computer. And anything that you paste on one side is refreshed on the other side, and then you can copy paste locally on each computer. It's simple. I couldn't find anything that did this, but it's a real time saver when I need to pass images and text from that desktop to my local computer without having to type everything again. And that's another example of something I needed I didn't find online, and so I made it.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. What would you say was the major aspect or aspects of wanting to adopt Go? Because from what you're telling me at this moment, um, the majority of the functionality is mostly on the front end. The back end is very lightweight
Right?
for those
Yeah.
things. Um, so what makes Go a good and interesting choices? But compare compared to Perl, I can
Yeah.
understand Python. It's pretty quick as well
It
to
is.
to do those things.
Did you ever try to solve dependencies issues with Python?
Not yet.
That thing is a nightmare.
Yeah.
I mean, even working with freaking dates. So from Python 2 to Python 3, I think sometime between the two happened that there was a new way to parse dates in Python 3
Mm.
that was dealing with time zones, or I can't remember what it was. But at the end of the day, I eventually had to do a if clause condition, say, oh, if it's Python 3, handle the date that way. If it's Python 2, handle the date that way. That was the deal breaker for me. From that
Yeah.
on, from
Yeah.
from then on, I was looking for something else because I couldn't deal with that stuff. And unfortunately, it's very Python distributions are really inconsistent between distributions. You never really know what versions of Python you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna get when you log into a system, and that makes very difficult to anticipate and make things that runs everywhere. I loved the fact that Go was a compiled language
Yeah.
because it was very easy to distribute, and that was really a game changer for me. I like scripting. It's fun. It's quickly editable for a lot of stuff. It's great, but when it comes to production and distribution, even working with containers, yes, you can pin the Python version and do virtual env and all that kind of stuff to kind of try to have a stable environment, but no, it always bites you back. Well, at least it always bit me back
Yeah.
back then, and I developed a not a hate for Python, but I don't see the value anymore. Why would I, work with Python when it's actually not harder in Go? And I can compile a Go program statically, so I don't even rely on the glibc on the remote server. And I was actually working on a script for a customer back a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, it worked. When I had to do that in the past, oh, you guys don't have the right Python version. Yeah,
Yeah.
just change that in the script and all that. Nah, couldn't deal with that anymore. So yeah, Go was really a game changer for this, and the fact that you can distribute a single binary in your from your CI/CD environment, compiled for multiple platforms, embedding the web server and web pages in this with the embed feature in Go. It had everything I needed. I would have hated, for example, to distribute a binary with a freaking directory with a web page in it. Nah, I
Yeah.
wouldn't do that. It
No.
sucks. But if you can embed that into the program, well, that's awesome. It's clean. It's just a single binary. It's rather small. You can distribute it everywhere. Yeah, that was what clicked for me.
Very nice. So, what would you say? So, I would expect it was your first experience with a compile language as well. So from now you were talking about PHP, Perl, Python,
Yeah.
probably some JavaScript and things like that. So
Yeah, I did Objective C, but yeah, I did some Mac and iOS development for fun back then. So that was compiled as well. But yeah, mostly script. Yeah.
yeah, that's a pretty big advantage for I haven't had to handle dependencies with Python, but what my problems are with dynamic languages is that maybe because I am blind, but sometimes I don't write the word correctly and things like that. So without a compiler to check what I'm typing, I have to double check myself a lot. So
Yeah.
that is my biggest issues. What were you using? So let's try to return when you started with Go. So I'm hearing a lot of newcomer to Go having some, maybe not some issues, but they are a little bit intimidated by the fact that there's no really a de facto project structure. You always hear that a lot. So was that a problem for you when you started? And what did you use at first to create your, let's say, your first one or two first web servers?
Yeah. It took a little bit of time, indeed, to kind of figure out, how that thing is supposed to be organized. And there's actually a big debate over on Reddit on that pseudo Go framework template thing that's somewhere on GitHub that claims to be the standard Go package and organization, and people say no, that's not how it works. It's too complex and all that stuff. What I loved about Go is that I tried to organize the code the right way, quote unquote, and it turns out apparently from the Go community there's no real right way to do things. Just spin it up and make it work. If your project is small, just throw a couple, .go files into the main directory and be done with it. It doesn't feel like there's anything wrong with it. And when the program grows, I always found it very easy with Go to refactor everything. Everything depends on the directory it's on. You can move files around, refactor the header, the package name on the top with the new package name. Kind of everything fits back into place pretty quickly. And when the code grows, you refactor, and I'm actually in the middle of this for the API WS package that I'm working on, because it grew a little bit more complex, and I'm actually working on the documentation. And when you work on the documentation, you find out, oh, those things are documented, but it shouldn't really matter for the user. So let's move that into a private space, into the internal directory of the Go package. And that's how it moved that's how it makes progress and moved forward. Um, it often seems like there's no wrong way to do things. Uh, and on the opposite, when you read on Reddit and blogs and stuff, usually the recommendation is don't overthink it. Just make something that works. It doesn't matter if there's a pkg directory or if it's cmd slash my command. If you want to put it in the root of your program because that's the only thing that the program is doing, it's a CLI. Don't even bother with the cmd slash whatever directory. It makes the code organization heavier, and it doesn't bring anything to understanding how it works. And there's a lot of different opinions out there. I love the fact that Go doesn't force you to do anything. You can do it your own way and evolve with it whenever you feel the requirement. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I've been saying that a lot in this podcast as well. So that's
Yeah.
for me, starting with a blank slate is so comforting. There's nothing when you start a Go project, an application, whatever it is. You only have a directory. That's it.
Yeah.
And now you create your first Go file at some place. Maybe it's at the root. Maybe you starting to create a package. But that to me feels way more
Very efficient. Yeah.
efficient. But I feel secure in there
Yeah.
compared to let's say Ruby on Rails, where you need to know where stuff
Scaffolding
are,
yeah.
and you have a lot of cognitive load to acquire before you even can start to write your first function and things like that. And I'm not saying that after a couple of days you know where things goes, but if we,
Yeah.
if we just take the example of someone that is starting with a new project, I find it very very interesting to have a blank slate. But the counter to that, like Marian Montagnino says in that podcast a long time ago, it can be intimidated for people. So this is a problem. It's not an easy problem to solve because you have half of the people that like it and half of the people that would like to.
It's opinionated. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's so I've had that problem. I kind of liked the scaffolding and the structures on some when discovering new firm. I tried working, for example, a little bit on Symfony for PHP or Laravel,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very it requires a structure with the views, the models, the controllers, and all that. It kind of feels safe having this, but at the end of the day, I eventually I never felt I never felt really comfortable with it. There was always something, because if you have that structure in place, it means that the framework and the backend is doing a lot to merge that together and make it a product that works. And sometimes that lot has a lot of consequences or requirements in the way that yourself are writing these files, and if it's not exactly declared as it should be and stuff like that, there's a lot of obscurity into how that kind of stuff works. So I really like the bare aspect of Go, and it's something that bothers me a little bit with Node.js, for example. When I work on the front end, you start working with the Vite project, for example, it's a freaking nightmare in the directory and node modules and package.json and all that. It's very intimidating for me because sometimes you modify things just because you saw someone on Stack Overflow, making it work by changing that variable. You go, okay, you shrug your shoulders and say, okay, let's try it out. Oh, it works. But you never, I'm not I'm not a professional Node.js developer as well. I kind of go with the flow and copy paste some code, especially on the scaffolding aspect of things. But it is very intimidating having a boilerplate code that it's kind of obscure, and you know that if anything goes wrong, you're not autonomous, and you're on your own to fix it. And thank God there's Google and Stack Overflow, but otherwise, I'd be in trouble a lot. So
Yeah.
yeah, there, go, love it.
Have you tried HTMX? Because you're talking a lot about React and
Yeah, yeah. I came across, posts and blogs about HTMX. For some reason, I feel very comfortable with the backend aspect of things with Go and manipulating REST APIs and structures and JSON and database and stuff. It it still feels counterintuitive for me to write HTML in code, which is a stupid thing to say because that's exactly what I'm doing with Node.js and Vite. But working with JavaScript feels much more natural on the front end, and generating pseudo HTML with JavaScript with React feels much more natural than having the Go functions and structures and template to generate the same thing. Um, I never really tried it. I don't know if it's as easy when you edit your code. Well, Go is compiled, so just for one thing, when I edit my code in VS Code, the Node.js and Vite listener web server, local web server, just reloads page dynamically. I don't think it would be that easy with a Go coded front end. It would have somehow to recompile even if it's automatic. So nope, not a big
yeah.
fan of the idea, but never really tried it either. So
No, that's totally fine. It was just I was just curious. Um, so what about okay? So you started Go and you liked it because it's compiled, because now you are able to deploy the CLI that you are building, and maybe
yeah,
even embed the assets like the HTML, the JavaScript, CSS inside the binary. This is great. So what about the language itself? So was that hard for you to go from Perl, Python, PHP to something? Let's be real, a little bit more verbose sometimes,
yeah,
and a little bit more involved like Go, because Go is at first it can be a little bit verbose compared to Python, for example, or Ruby, or you know JavaScript.
yeah. That's right. I've been caught more than my share going too fast and doing script language and spin up things really quickly, and lack of control, lack of error checking, and being bit by that later on. And I think that's one of the things that I appreciated in Go, that it kind of forces you to check on your errors and stuff like that. The language itself, it had to click at some point because,
Yeah.
believe it or not, I was very confused by the colon equals syntax. I was like, what the hell is this, right? Couldn't you just assign something to a variable with equal? And that was early on when I was just checking on in Go, and when do I have to do the column thing and whatnot. It becomes obvious later on that you declare a variable with colon, and then after that you can use equal sign, and that's actually what protects some of the context and the variables, and it becomes very natural. But I was intimidated whenever I discover a new language. One of the first thing you have to do is assign a variable when the thing is already a blocker, and you have to understand the concept just to assign a freaking variable to a freaking value to a variable. You're like, okay, throwing the towel and moving on with your day. So I had to go back to this and say, it's got to be something simple behind it. And indeed, it was pretty simple. I just had to read upon it and adopt it. Um, I kind of the the structure of the language forcing you to check your errors. The I guess at the beginning I was started working very simple programs, no interfaces, no concurrency, so I didn't have to deal with that kind of stuff or channels, and it felt easy and quick. I can't. I'm mostly on the side of typing strongly things. I prefer typed
Mm-hmm.
language because again with Python, I've been a bit more than my share with problems
Yeah.
like that and assigning the wrong stuff on the variable. So I kind of like the type control. So that was not a bother. I felt safer with it. But otherwise, the loop structure, the range thing felt unnatural at the beginning. Why wouldn't you have something like the iterator was kind of working differently, and it took me a while to figure out, in the for loop, how to call the range, and then get the iterator to the slices and all that stuff. But it was no big problem. Um I kind of find Go easy to read and understand when someone else than me wrote it,
Yeah.
obviously, but because rereading my own stuff is a freaking nightmare. I'm not big on that. I'm working on myself, right? I know I have to command and do that kind of stuff, but always too quick on things. But yeah, overall, I like the Go syntax and how I particularly liked how I could progress with the language and start very easy, very simple. And then when I felt the need to add concurrency, when I felt the need to clean and compose things together to kind of detach different aspects of the code, and how that was a hard concept. It still is. The concept of composition in
Mm-hmm.
Go, I'm still wrapping my head around it. I know I have to use it. I know I have to pass by interface and return by value, whatever the mantra is. So I'm getting there, but it's still a little bit of a challenge for me coming from a pure object-oriented language. I was working with Swift a little bit, and I spent a lot of time working with Objective-C. And it feels very natural to have parents and call super on class initializations and stuff like that. I was like, what the hell is this? There's not even an object concept. Well, there is, but you don't inherit object. You compose them together. And I feel it's very, very powerful. And I sometimes amaze myself when I successfully compose things together. But
Yeah.
it's not something that's natural for me yet. I'm getting there.
Yeah, that step is pretty high to climb. I think when you're
Yeah.
coming from a huge OHO background, and there, to be frank, there's nothing worse, in my opinion, than when you are seeing Go code that is looking like Java or C sharp, for example,
Yeah.
when people are trying to convey the inheritance and things like that. Um, but on the other hand, yeah, mastering the interface part is difficult. It's not something I believe. I've said that a lot, but you know, don't start with your interface. Just write your code, and at
Yeah.
some point, everyone is saying that, but it's very true. I mean, this is the kind of thing that you realize when you have written a lot of Go at some point, is that don't force the interface. They will come naturally, and it will be easy. And sometimes you might create an interface, and you will probably never use
Never
that.
use it. Yeah, it
So
happens.
that that
So
that that adds some complexity to your code. Go is supposed to be simple, so that's interesting. So yeah, the
yeah.
interface, the the concurrency is another beast.
Oh yeah.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised to hear that at the beginning you were not tempted to use that a lot. So that was one of my problem when I started. Uh, I was so happy to finally be able to, I don't know, to try and see if writing a lot of concurrent code was going to make my program faster. I was kind of over exaggerating. Um, this
A lot of
part is still
expectations.
very
Yeah.
very hard. It's hard to write good concurrent programs.
It is. Yeah, it's not an easy task. Go concepts around it are rather simple, so that's good. You have a simple tool to work with, channels and stuff like that. So now it's up to you to organize the code and look it correctly and be conscious of what is multi-threaded and what's not. On the project I was working at the beginning, I didn't need a lot of concurrency, right? Most of that was taken care of by the HTTP server and all that, so it
Right.
was concurrent, but
Yeah.
didn't matter to me. And I when did I start working on concurrency? Mostly on projects that query HTTP APIs. Yeah. I was writing something for a customer that needs to browse the content of a file system like structure. So, how do you call it? Recursive
Mm-hmm.
calls to folders inside folders and then files and then up to the parent folders and then continue with the other folders. So, typical recursive call with an API on each folder that I need to call to have the folder content. Now, what happens if you do this non-concurrently? Well, you're spending a fair amount of time doing the request and waiting for the results. And it's most of the time because I don't need to do much really with the result. It's just, marshaled into a struct, and I just need to get a couple of fields from this. So my program was not CPU intensive, but it was slow because 90% of the time was spent on querying an external service, chained one after the other. So really, I needed concurrency to make that efficient. So how do you do it, right? Do you parse the first level of folders and then spread a function for each of those folders? Didn't feel really scalable or universal because you could have a structure that has only one folder and then a
Yeah.
bazillion of them behind it. So I really needed something that would be managing a queue and let's say 20 concurrent requests and just send the request to the worker because it's kind of the pattern I'm using, I think, and get the results in the channel. But it is complicated to wrap your head around it and have a structure of the code that can separately throw all the requests out there, following the folder structures and all that, and send the requests to whatever queue management you're going to get. And then in order get the results because you don't want you still need to position the folder I'm currently in because I needed to take care of the depth of the current depth of the folder structure and all that. Well, there was a lot going on, but I finally managed to have that up and running in maybe a day, right? It wasn't that hard. I looked into it and I went from, I don't know, I think it was 2 minutes to run the codes for 100,000 files down to 7 seconds in the end. Yeah. So
Nice.
that was really, really necessary. Yeah. And I see that concurrency concepts in Go are simple. You read stuff from channel and then put stuff back into channel. Now go figure where you read and put those stuffs in the channel. It's up to the developer. But I think the Go's approach makes that for a steep learning curve. Once you get the concept and once you have the grasp of it, it becomes more clear exactly what you have to do. And it's really a first function that you go func something and the first time you do this, it feels amazing. It's like, oh, okay, that thing is running in the background, and then my program just keeps going on with whatever it has to do. It opens endless possibilities, and it's really fun to work with, I find. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Totally. And to return, yeah, the worker pool pattern is I would say one of the, how can I say that? Probably the more approachable at first. It's
Mhm.
pretty clear. Very very nice. I use that a lot myself as well. In ETL kind of workflow and things like that. It's great. It's just great, and the limit also prevents you from taking down the services and things like that.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
first,
Yeah.
I was doing a lot of requests myself. So when I needed to export some database to another companies at another company, I kind of took down the production server because Go was was kind of eating all of the.
Uh-oh.
It was an old ASP.NET MVC application. The server was IIS, and yeah, I think Go was kind of beating that thing. But yeah, it was kind of funny. So yeah, you still need to put some Some
guardrails.
limits. Yeah,
Yeah.
guardrails. Right.
Yeah, it's so easy to spin up a function, and everybody tells you that. You know, look in Reddit and go, yeah, just spin up a function. You can have 100,000 functions running. Yes, probably. Now, what are they doing? Those functions are they consuming memory? Well, if they do, you better be careful. And yes, it's easy to make mistakes. But luckily enough, Go makes it not too hard keeping control on that stuff. And it was not really obvious at the beginning. I was looking at different blogs and websites to, how should I work with clients, HTTP clients, because sometimes you read, well, yes, the Go Max Proc, the amount of functions that you have running is maybe Go Max Proc plus one or two or plus 50% of, but it doesn't take it. It's assuming those articles assume that my code is doing work. Well, it's not. It's really
Right.
getting a result from an HTTP REST API, and I don't really I do really need to spin up a lot of functions and a lot of concurrent function, because most of the time is spent blocking, waiting for IOs. So it doesn't matter. It's not consuming a lot of memory. So I did have a hard time finding well thought articles to explain, how to concurrently query HTTP servers in Go. But I figured it out eventually. Yeah. There's no like right answer. How big is the worker pool, right? Is 10, is 20? It really depends on the type of connections you have with the server. And yeah, trial and errors.
Yeah.
I finally found that 20 was a good number, and I rolled with it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, this is all fine. So yeah. Go is a simple language to start toying around with, but it's a hard one to master at some point when you.
It is
Yeah.
like every language, I guess.
Yeah.
But I feel like the learning curve, and you can progress with Go. You can start simple and build your way and build your skills with your requirements, and there's a lot of documentation. The documentation of Go itself is amazing.
Yeah.
Once you get the how the documentation works, how it's organized on the left, the Go package website, it kind of starts making sense. It's a little bit confusing at the beginning. What is a function? What is an interface function? And what can be called directly? What has to be called on a struct and stuff like that. But once you get the grasp of it, it's actually very well thought. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Totally, and you were mentioning about the errors and whatnot. So yes, I think this is also a pretty strong reason for Go. You wanted to talk about JSON, marshalling and
Yeah.
unmarshalling. This so that's also something I find very. When I started Go, like in 2014, it made so much sense to me to be able to put some tag on my fields, and that
Mm-hmm.
that is what I will be receiving in JSON, and that is what I will be sending. I was like, wow, I came from a .NET background, and in the .NET world, and I'm sorry, I will say sorry to my listeners. Sometimes people get mad when I'm kind of bashing on C# a little bit, but I mean, I'm sorry. I did that for 15
But you're
years.
gonna do it anyway.
I will do it. Oh yeah, this is my podcast. I will do it. But the point is, exactly like you said, when you've been bitten by something, and you had some difficulties and things like that, I have fought so many hours against the framework. So it's not really the language, but so the bottom line is that on .NET, when you want to send or receive JSON from the wire, you still need to use this third party thing. So it's not even built into the language, and
No.
the ceremony and the functions that you need to call and things like that. And I know it's like 3 lines of code. It's not really the amount. It's just that I don't know. When I discovered how Go was working for JSON, I was like, wow, this is exactly what I would have hoped to see in
Yeah.
all the languages that I've tried so far.
And it's even debatable, right? Yeah, arguably, someone could say, "Well, it's not a standard package." Well, is it? No. Well, if you look at YAML, for example, I don't think it's a standard package. It's not in the stdlib, but the tag thing makes it so easy to integrate and merge into the language that it feels like it's built into the framework. Granted, it could be overused, right? I've seen some things that were overusing tags, but that simple feature of being able to associate tags into a member of a struct is very powerful. And yeah, in what I have to do, it's pretty much all I'm doing.
Yeah.
Dealing with YAML and JSON. That's in my programs. That's all I'm doing, and I think it makes the code much more readable and also much more faster to write. And you can trust that that thing is going to work. And there's a lot of tiny options that you can have. Omit empty and all that kind of stuff. So flexible enough that you can do whatever you need to do with it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That was really a game changer as well. I didn't. Python is kind of the same thing. I think they have a natural mapping of the objects in Python with JSON, same
The
as
JSON package.
JavaScript. Yeah, and it's good that modern language should have that built in. That's usually the stuff we're dealing with.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, totally. So yeah, so Go is pretty nice at building, like you said, web API. I hear you about being a little bit reticent about putting the front end there. Not the front end, but let's say the HTML template.
Yeah.
There's a couple of good options, but yes, I mean at some point you have to go with what you're familiar with and where you have the most fun. Let's just say that. Maybe the HTML template, especially the built-in package and Go. It's not the most fun things to work with, especially when you're used to have real time refreshing,
Yeah.
and things like that. So
yeah, I did that a little bit for the front end, the API WS package I'm working on. It is basically I needed a package that would do what I do with every single project. I need a web UI that is static files because it's React, and I need a Go API and write the handlers to handle the routes. So I wanted a framework that would simply instantiate like new API. Here is the UI. Here is the file system for the UI, and add route and start. Right.
yeah.
So I needed to do something like that. That's what I did with API WS, and so sometimes I need templating because the title of the web page, for example, when it has to be changed when it's being served. So I did HTML. I did templating a little bit. It's still 2-3 lines of code, and I will go back to it because I think there's ways to write React code with HTMLX. I feel like there's something like that, and I'm curious about it. If there's not, and and I don't know HTMX, right? If HTMX is just about writing DOM with Go without all the bells and whistles that brings React with the no refresh of components in the page related to a state and stuff like that. If there's nothing like that, yeah, it would be complicated to adopt that for me. But I will dig into this. It's interesting.
I would recommend if you want to check components. So the author came to this podcast two times. He was a huge React let's say user, and now he's doing most of it. It's basically creating component in Go. So you basically write the HTML. It's similar to as JSX is for the React world, where now you're writing the HTML basically in Go directly. So with a we could say a small language of itself, but it's still div at the end of the day, and but it's just that you're calling that into Go directly. And HTMX, what it is It's just that piece, that piece that makes the communication with the server possible. So basically, when
Mm-hmm.
you're submitting a form and you're clicking buttons, let's say you have a drop down on your page. When you want to open the drop down, you might want to fill it from from some data coming from the server. So anytime that you have some kind of user action on your front end, you can call an endpoint on your backend, and the HTML return will target just a small piece of your UI. So
I'll definitely check this out. Yeah,
it's
yeah, that
exactly
seems interesting.
like rendering a small component in React,
Yeah.
if you will, but very so it's now possible since 2020 2021. It's now fully possible to build what we called a spa in 2012. It's fully possible to do that without JavaScript anymore.
Good
That
stuff. All
Yeah,
right.
that's
Yeah,
kind of
love it.
crazy. And another project, Data Star, is a little bit different, but that one is kind of bringing a lot of functionality together. It's like using the data attribute on the HTML
Yeah.
element. So it's replacing HTMX in a sense, and allows you to be fully reactive on the front end, and it's calling back your backend, but your backend is sending that is the nice thing about Datastar. The backend is kind of using server side event, and it's now able to send a small piece of HTML, and maybe after that it's doing a long query to a database, or it's calling an external API, and now it's able to send another piece of HTML. So you can imagine your pages having multiple divs or component, and they might be able to be updated from a single call to your backend API.
Yeah, that's
Pretty.
kind of what seems interesting coding with just Node, right? On the server and on the client side. Having the both work together seems like an interesting concept. And I wouldn't do that because I don't want to code my server in JavaScript. It doesn't feel right to me, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's wrong, but I feel much more comfortable doing it with Go. So if on the other end, I can bring my front end to the Go language, I would be more inclined doing this indeed. One of the things that I would probably require is being able to use frameworks that are available out there, like especially UI frameworks. I'm a big fan of Mantine, which has a creep load of standard components. They look great, they're easy to use. It's really nice. I never felt the need to create my own component, at least for the projects I'm working on. And Mantine for me is excellent. I couldn't do without it. So would I be able to integrate like third-party UI libraries into that kind of stuff, or
No.
would I have to
So
roll
they
with
they
my
are
own?
JavaScript based.
Okay.
It's a React component suite. I would guess.
Yeah, it
No,
is.
no, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't know. That's it.
Right.
So yeah, the component is all about writing your own component in Go itself.
Exactly
So
from
you
scratch.
you
Right.
cannot import any JavaScript library and things like that. So you
So they
are
have standard
only.
libraries for buttons, for combo, for stuff like that. But if you can probably customize it with CSS, I suppose.
Well,
But
there's
then
nothing
yeah.
that comes built in. It's just
Ah, okay.
a library that allows you to build your own. So it's more
Raw
like,
HTML. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Well, it's more like if you wanted to build your own. Maybe you could use Tailwind, you could use Bootstrap, Buildmod, those kind of things. CSS
Mm-hmm.
framework is all good, but yes, it's not. It has nothing to do with JavaScript.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. So that yeah
Good
that that
stuff.
that was great. So anything any closing thought that you want to share here? Any message for the listeners? Where can they reach you and things like that?
Yeah, I've got my GitHub repo, github.org slash YBIZEUL. You'll probably see that in the podcast notes.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm not a professional Go developer. That's when, when I came to you, I'm like, okay, I like your podcast. I'm a part-time and free-time developer. I don't know what I'm doing, but I love Go and I'm building stuff with Go. So, why not? I'd like to have a conversation with you on the podcast. So that repository probably sucks. There's probably a lot of flaws and problem with it, open issues, whatever. And I'm always open to improving and better understand things. And there's probably a lot of bugs going on in there. But in the products, there's a few users. I have probably around 20 or 30 stars on some of those projects. Can you imagine this? It's a lot of stars if you think about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, very humble, small projects, a lot of fun. That's all I'm doing, and I love learning new things and improve myself. That's the kind of stuff I do. Yeah. So go on the repo, test things out, make your comments, open issues, open PRs, whatever. And yeah, and I'm still doing this on my free time. It's like a hobby for me, and having a lot of fun with it.
Excellent. Yeah, it's always nice to talk with people that are studying with Go. It kind of reminds you of what it was at the beginning and things like that. So
Hmm.
I mean, it's always great. So thank you for your time and
Yeah,
yeah,
my pleasure. Thanks to you.